Hey everybody, Gil here with the Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser, and in last week's episode we showed you how the boat was constructed, where we had some bad core in the coach house, and where we had some rot in the bulkhead and probably a previous repair that wasn't done right. I'll link up to the video right up here in the corner just to show you. But at the end of that video I mentioned that I have some time set up with Michael to talk about options, and he's the one that owns the boatyard. Before I wanted to meet with him, I really wanted to explore some more areas of the coach house just to see if that problem was bigger than I initially anticipated. So in this video I'm going to show you what I started to cut out this week and kind of what I found, and then I'll go over a little bit about what we talked about with Michael and what the next steps are. I wanted to come over to the other side and see if this was just as bad. I was down below and I noticed there was a small soft spot in the ceiling, and I could see it. I went over and touched it. There's a couple of soft spots. So I wanted to come over to the top side of the boat and sort of repeat the process that you saw me do right near the companionway on the port side of the boat. I'm about 6 inches or so in from, 4 to 6 inches in from the edge of the top of the coach house, and I just cut these pieces about 1 foot wide. And honestly, I'll show you what I have. I don't really like what I'm seeing. Let's take a look. I went ahead and pulled these two off, already cut them and cleaned it up so I can show you. But this looks visibly okay, but again, you can hear that very hollow sound versus hear the difference. And I again have spots that I can push my hand into. I speculate this might be termites and not rot. It's too sort of widespread, and when I pull this apart, I don't know, it just doesn't seem representative of rot to me. A little bit of mud-like stuff in there, and I think that might be the discharge from the termites. They grab moisture out of the bilge or wherever they do and live inside a wood. Thankfully, we treated them, and I've yet to see one live termite anywhere. And you know, I believe we have them gone. The question now is, how do we repair all the damage these little suckers have done? Let me show you what this looks like, and just to give you a sense, yeah, that's down into the galley. Hold on. So I'm still aiming the camera essentially in the same direction where you were just seeing me, and again, you can see this is clearly soft, right? I mean, I'm pushing my finger right through it. So just to give you an idea on how soft that is, it's soft enough that I can do this with it. And what I was saying before, the reason I'm thinking it's like termites, like look, there's just, it's like paper. It's as if there's no adhesive between them. And then here's a great view of what I was talking about. No live termites in there, but that sort of indicates to me like maybe trails where they might have been. Just don't know. But sadly, this is going all the way through. I mean, there's the beams that run a thwart ship when you look up in the galley that you can see. Heck, you're looking down there at the fern on the galley table. So, yeah. Only thing I know to say is, well, so I have some decisions to make, and the questions really become, what's the best solution here? Should I try and go down the path I was thinking I was going to initially, which was cut a small opening, repair the core in there, glass over the top, and do this in small pieces? Or am I better off essentially cutting the entire coach house roof off of that thing for a good section, 3/4 of that roof, pulling all the plywood off of it, essentially exposing only those beams that run from side to side, and you know, it'd be open to the world there, and then coming back with marine grade plywood put over the entire top, epoxy coated, layered appropriately, screwed down to those particular beams, and then have, you know, glass put over the entire thing. It's certainly a much bigger job than anticipated, but the question really becomes, is it really the right thing to do? All the other horizontal surfaces on the boat at this point are getting new fiberglass. Why leave this one if it also has a problem? So honestly, and as I think about this, what I just found up there is worse than any rot that I found in the deck itself of the boat. Which is really shocking. I guess I know I don't walk up on the coach house roof as often as I do on the deck house roof, but it surprised me for some reason. So I think the big question is, what am I going to do? Well, I took a bunch of video. I'm going to show Deb what I ran into. We'll talk about it. chances are I'll be doing that with a drink in my hand. I'll let you guys know what the decision is and how we went about thinking about it. In the event you have to make a similar decision, which I hope you don't, but if you do, we'll at least share what our thoughts were on pros and cons and why we chose whatever it is we end up deciding to do. So we went ahead and met with Michael, and I didn't get this part on video, I apologize, but it was really an interactive discussion. I mean, I needed to be actively involved with him talking about this, and it really wasn't a place where I could focus on the filming. I needed to get all the details I needed for this decision. So what I did was I showed him what I showed you in last week's video and this week's video, right? The 2 places of core rot under the mizzen step where it was soft, that bulkhead repair. Kind of talked to him a little bit about what my thoughts were, right? Should I just patch and repair those couple of small pieces of the core? Or that last thing I just mentioned when I was getting off the boat the other night, which was essentially ripping off 3/4 of the roof or so. It was a really good discussion. I've said this a bunch of times. What I really like about Michael is he gives you all the options. He tells you, yeah, sure, we can rip it all off and start from scratch, and here's the cost of doing that. But at the end of the day, you probably don't have to. And what he was sharing with me is the structure of this boat is, the mass essentially is what's giving it all of its strength, right? Its rigidity and its strength, it's a lot of it's in the mass of it, not just a single component. And what he's saying is the construction of these boats from 1978, when it was built all the way on, was that there were pieces of plywood that were sort of put together across the roof of that boat. And whether that was 3 pieces of plywood across, or you make repairs and it becomes 5 pieces across, it's not a big deal. So instead of a 4-foot wide piece of plywood, maybe it's 3 feet, and then you do a 2-foot repair, and then it's another 3 feet of the original wood, and then whatever over there. What he's saying is if you do that repair right, and then we skin over the whole thing and turn that into one mass again, the epoxy holds all those together. From a mass perspective, you have the same mass. From a rigidity perspective, you have something just as rigid, if not more, because you've bonded all those pieces together where it doesn't appear that was the case in the original construction. And then you skin over the whole thing again, creating and forming one single bond that takes the strength of the coach house walls, the strength of the roof, all of it combined to rebuild all of this. He did recommend that I lift up that mizzen step and certainly inspect and repair that, but rather than pull off 3/4 of the roof as I was suggesting, what he said was be strategic about it, be smart and strategic. So the suggestion is to take pilot holes and essentially from down below rather than up top. I was doing all my exploratory holes through the fiberglass, leaving more and more places to patch, even if the core was good. He suggested doing that from down below. So he said, go down below and drill holes in all the different places through the bottom of this thing. Set yourself a depth so you're not going all the way through the glass on the top. And he said, again, be smart about where you do it. Do it around the hatches. Do it around the beams where you saw this rot. Do it around that mizzen step and even around the helm station. But do it from below and determine where you really do need to make these repairs. That was really a smart move. So essentially what's going to happen here is I'm going to pull parts of the roof off and I'm going to repair it. But I'm not going to just take a blanket 3/4 or half of that roof off of there. Instead, I can plan accordingly. And let's just say, for example, I find a piece of rot that's a foot by a foot. I'm just going to make up an example. And that might mean that I cut 6 inches past it so I'm on a beam, and then 6 or 8 inches past it the other way so I'm again on a beam. And just like you can think of house construction, you have your studs running up and down, and you face your wood right up against it so it screws into the into the stud. I would essentially be doing the same thing on those horizontal beams that run across the boat. So I might cut it a foot longer than I need to, the rotted area, right, to get into good solid wood, and also to make sure that that repair starts, or that repair that I do finishes right on top of one of those beams. That'll make it easier to do the repair and also give me the strength. So that's the direction we're going to go. I have a lot of stuff to do, and they're kind of in the middle of doing some of the glass work they were doing on the sides of the coach house. So it didn't make sense to kind of stop them from doing all that. So the direction I'm going to go here is I am absolutely doing those pilot holes and doing the testing of that. In the meantime, I'm going to start putting the glass fixed ports in around the boat. The reason being is as soon as I do that, I can start keeping some of the dust and horrible dirt out from down below. I've mentioned it in a bunch of different videos. When we first brought the boat to the yard, I didn't plan on decking, fiberglassing the decks in the coach house. So I didn't plan all that accordingly. And when I pulled the glass out to have new coach house windows made, I just put some plywood up on the inside. That dust has covered everything down below. And Deb started cleaning it up, but frankly, if she cleans that up and then we end up sanding, grinding, and re-glassing the roof of the coach house, it's going to be a disaster down there again. This was Michael's suggestion. I thought it was a good one. He's like, you know what, we can be careful. We won't damage the windows. We don't have to worry about that. If we paint or anything, we can mask them. So go ahead and put the windows in, and then you can start working on getting this thing kind of set up like a proper yacht down below. Certainly when I cut holes in the roof, I'm going to make a mess down below, but I can I can put that plywood down on top of it, and the glass work and the grinding will all stay on top, and it's not going to be coming down through. So that's the plan. I know I left kind of hanging in the last one. I was really disappointed in what we found. Needed to have this discussion with Michael. Did, and I'm much more confident in the steps going forward. So it is Saturday the 11th of February, and we're here to do a little bit more work on the boat. We really contemplated a lot about the things we had to do because of that rot on the coach house. Let me put this up. But today, what I think we're going to do is we're going to work on trying to get the glass back into the openings. I need to really fit it in there. As you guys know, I had new glass cut. It's not exactly a match for the size that came out. So there's a couple places where I'm having to just make a little bit of an additional adjustment on the outer edge of the frame it's going to go in. So I went ahead and picked up some 4000 UV sealant. If you watched our other video, I'll put a link up above for our video on rebedding glass in an aluminum hatch. It's going to be very similar, but I am using a combination material. It's not just an adhesive, and it's not just a sealant. It's a combination of both. So I chose to do the 4000 UV sealant and bonding agent. This is a semi-permanent. I can remove it if need be. It remains flexible, which is exactly what we want for the shifting of the boat in heavy seas. And the UV protection should help keep it from breaking down over time. At least it'll last longer than otherwise. So yeah, I think the next step here is where it's getting kind of nice out. I'm glad spring's not too far away. But the next step is to come up on the boat and let's mark where we need to start adjusting this and use either the router or the oscillating cutting tool to make some adjustments. So what I have here is new glass. I don't know how well you can see this. I got my little suction cup holder just to help hold it in place. This is safety glass, and it's kind of interesting. I'll show a close-up of this. Essentially, it's 2 layers of glass bonded to a film in the center. And if you've ever seen glass sort of crack, and the crack remains in the glass but everything stays intact, that's what safety glass is. It's not as strong as tempered glass, what you actually have, for example, in your car windshields. Tempered glass, when it breaks, shatters into a million little tiny pieces, ideally not to create a jagged edge that will cut you. That's what tempered glass is. Safety glass is designed to, if it cracks, stay in place. And given we have the coach house walls, that's what we ultimately thought we should do. And doggone it, it's starting to rain. Let me move my stuff. Got to get back in the habit of eating better, so breakfast is a smoothie. Though, it's ginormous. So what I've noticed on these is the glass I had cut is not an exact fit, right? Call it a little bit of rough work on the fiberglass, not exact, the glass not cut exact, these things not having fit great in the previous windows. But what that all adds up to is the glass doesn't necessarily fit in here real good. So what I've done is I've taken the glass and I'm essentially dry fitting it into this opening. And then I'm using a dry erase pen, and I'm just marking the areas where I'm going to need to shave a little bit more off. A little bit there, a little bit here across the top. And I'm going to wait and check the other side until I get this left side all fitting in well, instead of making a lot of cuts all at once. Let me go ahead and get this glass out of here. I still don't trust these suction cups, but I should. So what I do is I set the depth at just what the depth is I need here. Now I'm actually doing this freehand. I lamented a lot about the right way to do this, or the best way to do it. And I chose doing it freehand because I didn't have any other bit that would work. A rabbit bit, I couldn't find one big enough where the ball bearings would roll on this upper piece and it would give me the depth of cut I needed. Like I said, I just couldn't get one that was going to be the perfect fit. What I found is if I take very, very narrow cuts at a time and go up to the line, it works. I don't know if you can see this. I have probably a little less than 1/4 of an inch to take off of here. And I'll make... So what I do is I set the depth at just what the depth is I need here. Now I'm actually doing this freehand. I lamented a lot about the right way to do this, or the best way to do it. And I chose doing it freehand because I didn't have any other bit that would work. A rabbit bit, I couldn't find one big enough where the ball bearings would roll on this upper piece and it would give me the depth of cut I needed. Like I said, I just couldn't get one that was going to be the perfect fit. What I found is if I take very, very narrow cuts at a time and go up to the line, it works. I don't know if you can see this. I have probably a little less than 1/4 of an inch to take off of here. And I'll make probably 4 passes or 5 passes across this, just shaving off a little bit each time as opposed to trying to make that big cut. So let's get started. All right, that's a good fit. Move to the next. All right, I've repeated my process up here. I took my Sharpie and I marked the places I need to trim this one. There's not a lot here. It's actually just along this bottom edge. I think that's the only spot I have. So this is usually, I won't say trial and error, but it's take a little, test it, take a little, test it. So here we go. I'm just going to pull the glass out of here so we can paint this with epoxy. You see me mix epoxy a lot of times on this channel, but using a very small amount here. I'm using 205 hardener for the faster cure, and I only did 1 pump of each. Hopefully it's enough to run through the areas I need to. I actually did this the other day on these windows, on these ports, but unfortunately, I used the router to trim some edges, so I have some exposed wood again. I just want to get that part taken care of. And I'm only putting this on the seated edge, right where the sealant and the glass will go. That's the spot where I'm wanting to fill this, or cover it, I should say, not fill it. Just creating essentially a plastic barrier between my sealant and the wood trim around it, or the wood core around it. Well, that's all the time we have for this week's video. Please do, if you like this video, go ahead and click on the subscribe button, give it a like and a thumbs up, and if you would, click on the notification bell to receive notifications anytime we upload a new video. Sure do appreciate it, everybody. Do us a favor, check out the 2 videos we have listed here. Hopefully you'll like those as well. Thanks, everybody. From Gil and Deb and the crew on Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser. Bye, y'all.